Emergency, you can go out the way that you came in, the front door. We also have 2 emergency exits on this side, one through the committee room and one through the hallway. Right. And muster point is in the parking lot out front. Right. So first of all, I'd like to recognize that we're meeting on the traditional and unceded territory of the Comox First Nation. We have a number of delegations who are with us today, and thank you all for coming. Before you start, just want to point out that generally it's not, when the Committee of the Whole receives delegation and when the CVRD receives delegations, we don't make any kind of decisions after a delegation, so we receive for information. Each delegation will have 10 minutes to present, and then we'll have time for questions. Right, so with that, I would like to invite Judy Norbury from the Comox Valley Accessibility Committee to come forward and start with her presentation. Thank you, Judy.
Thanks, okay, good afternoon. I've been introduced already. I don't need to do that again. My name is, well, you know it. So as Arzina said, I represent the Comox Valley Accessibility Committee. And today we are here to offer our assistance in making the Comox Valley as a whole a more inclusive and accessible community. Let's go here. We were founded in 1998 and worked with the regional district, including Cumberland, Comox, and Courtenay, supported by the Courtenay Coordinator of Special Needs Recreation. It's comprised of both able-bodied and disabled volunteers. We would like to see both the regional district and the city view issues and future decisions using an accessibility lens. This is a little of our history here, 2 of our old timers. As part of accessibility lens as part of the larger social structure to make the Comox Valley as barrier-free, inclusive, and as safe as possible for all residents and visitors. Accessibility issues affect people of all ages, income levels, and mobility levels, and it's not just about wheelchair accessibility. A person with impaired sight or hearing, a parent with a baby stroller, a senior with a mobility scooter, or a skier temporarily using crutches for a broken leg can all benefit from improved accessibility. I shall list some of the many past accomplishments that our committee has worked for. Can I go back on this too? Mm-hmm. Okay. So some of the things, there we go. Our success is the beach mats at the accessible fire pit at Goose Spit. That was a great plus. The Sid Williams disabled seating platform at the Sid Williams Theatre. The Lewis Center lift with the new renovations, the bottom level and the top level are now accessed without going all the way outside and up that way. The life kits for use in emergencies, that's where we put together all the things that somebody would need in the event of an emergency that would be on the fridge. So if there was an earthquake or something, people would have that with them. The portable folding ramp. This is a mysterious portable folding ramp that seems to disappear, and I think we've found out where it is, but I still can't remember. But it does, it's in possession, should be with the emergency planning, emergency preparedness people. Adding asphalt ramps to ease bumps and rounded curbs is something that can be easily done, plus properly constructed letdowns. Like this one. We have been working with the Courtenay Recreation to consult with and educate the public about accessibility challenges and solutions. Through our advocacy and promotion, the Mayor of Courtenay proclaimed the first Saturday of every June as Access Awareness Day. We have an ongoing offer to conduct scooter tours around the city so that those in official decision-making positions can experience firsthand the reality of moving through the world in a chair. And those will soon be suspended for the winter season, but I think there may be some of you in this room that have gone off with John. I don't know if there's anybody who've done that. Oh, excellent, very good. And our members also serve on other committees as accessibility advisors. Some of these are the Public Patient Advisory Committee at the new hospital, the Interregional Transportation Select Committee, the Social Planning Committee, and the Cumberland Accessibility Committee, on which I sit as well. And now I shall continue with some of the ongoing issues that may not be evident unless you're facing them yourself or with a disabled companion. One of these being curb letdowns with dangerous bumps. This one is not a good design. As you can see, the scooter has to go on the grass, so the person's lawn has been kind of torn up. No curb cuts in some places. This really amazed me when I saw this picture. I haven't been up there, but that's such an obvious no-brainer to fix that, you know, then you just can't get into those lovely woods. So,
Where is that?
do you know where this is, John?
It's up on Elderberry, in behind Costco. And in order to get up there, one has to go see the post office boxes.
Right?
There is a little bit of a let down there, and you can go weave around that and then cut across to the asphalt. But
So-
that's one of those areas where it's been announced that there was no curb cut there, and so far nothing's been done.
Okay. And this is my favorite. This is snow in parking lots where there's argument over who actually should clear that. That lump of snow is right on the letdown to which you can go to the bus stop. So for a long time, I couldn't get to that particular bus stop, which I use frequently. That's my car there. And it was a puzzle to me why one person said, well, it's not our jurisdiction. I looked at it today, I was there, and it's just, like, it's about 3 feet wide. It's the end of the sidewalk. The driveway, yes, maybe doesn't belong to the city, but anyhow, personal bone of contention. This is sidewalks that are snow piled in disabled parking spots, which is quite common. Automatic doors in awkward positions or unsafe sometimes. This one being into the art gallery, you can't tell too well here, but it feels like you might fall off the edge of a step there when you access the button. And these are sidewalks that have grown completely over, or almost, necessitating going out on the road. This one here, you can't tell too well, but really it's the road that goes in behind Thrifties, the new Thrifties, and if there's no way you can actually go up the side, if the sidewalk is covered in snow or something, you can't get to that place where you can see there's no letdown. So unless you can get on the sidewalk, which sometimes is difficult, you can't get there. And this is one of our favorite, is the really poor sidewalk that goes up to the Ryan, to the college and the hospital. Ongoing discussion about what should be done there, of course. And 2 scooters could not pass each other on that. Feels very unsafe for anybody going up there. So, and this is, let me change my, lack of sidewalks in some areas. So this here, I think we've got, I don't know if the next one is, no, I guess it didn't get put in here. But I think this is at Miracle Beach. And I think that might have been fixed. So I shall carry on. The city, in consultation with the regional district, has recently restored one of the 2 excellent wheelchair parking spots. And in the beginning there, I had the, maybe I can go back fast. No, I won't go back fast. In front of the museum, between the museum and the credit union, there was 2 spots there that were both moved to facilitate the new bus stop there. And that was very awkward for quite a few of my friends who really used that, depended on that space. But now this is a success. They've restored one of them, and they've put 2 new ones in pretty good places. Not 2 right there, but close by. So we are in consultation with the public library to ensure that there is a properly accessible washroom in the downtown area. This means one that has an easily accessed door suitable for a larger scooter and any sized wheelchair. At the moment, no such facility exists. Many costly issues could have been prevented by the establishment of a sound policy, procedure, or consultation with our committee before changes were made. Our committee advocates for change inside and outside of the Comox Valley Regional District. Some of the projects we hope to see improvements in are under the jurisdiction of BC Parks, such as the Miracle Beach access. And I believe there was supposed to be a slide on this because I think they've done, I don't know, it's Miracle Beach or maybe it's Saratoga Beach, but they've got a nice beach mat.
Judy, one more minute. 1 minute.
1 minute, okay. So I will go to the end here, and this is, we're struggling to effectively advocate for the changes that are needed. We ask the CVRD to consider working with municipal partners to embed accessibility as a core function of our local governments. To do this, an accessibility strategy should be created, as we can't do it on our own. So we're asking for there to be some sort of structure within the government body so we're not always having to bring everything to them. Rather, they see the needs and consult with us to see what we advise.
Right.
So how's that?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes. All right. If it's okay, I'm going to open it up for questions. Director Frisch?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Judy, for the presentation. I do really appreciate the work you guys do, and having attended some of your meetings in the past, I know it's a lot to take on for your smaller group. And this is the second time, because you just presented to Courtney not too long ago, and so I hope some of these things are being resolved. And I know a few of us from Courtney will probably follow up on a few of those missing letdowns. Those could be easy wins for us. And I would also point out that there are some other issues with accessibility. Pathway I use across between two schools often gets iced up and flooded and becomes treacherous. So I'm with you and support you all the way.
Well, we are having additional help through Dave Snyder through the city, so somehow that's been very helpful.
That's great. He's a good guy. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
He did.
I don't see any other questions, but I have a couple myself. So first of all, I think your suggestion of having the CVRD work with staff and with the other municipalities, maybe a question for staff: is there a mechanism for that to happen, where the engineers are or the planners are getting together?
Certainly, when Courtney received the delegation, they wrote to the regional district and asked that we look at ways of partnering, and that is on our mind to come through those. One mechanism we have is the regional growth strategy, and definitely it aligns with some of our policies with respect to that. It is something that we will be coming back to a report to the board on based on Courtney's ask of us. So the conversation continues. There definitely is some components that are those of the responsibility of the municipalities, the roads, the sidewalks, or otherwise. It's not for the regional district to tell the municipalities how to do their business, but definitely setting up practices and processes whereby consultation is as they have asked of us. Those are things that we can work on together.
Great. I had the pleasure of being on one of John's tours of Courtney, as well as in Comox in a wheelchair, and it was interesting just to see the difference between the two, and really surprised at how what I thought would be an easier accessibility on a scooter had a really bad problem with getting into some of the public bathrooms, especially at the library and the photos that you had of the art gallery. So, with that in mind, I'm just wondering if our new building has been assessed for turnaround for motorized, like for scooters, if there's been a look at the space there so that people can turn.
Thanks, and I put that question to Scott Smith today and did provide some information that we've built it to the building code requirements and the requirements of the City of Courtney. That may not include accessibility for motorized scooters, but it is to the standard of the building code. And we will work upon accessing the building once we are there with the committee to take a look at what we can do to advance or improve on things that aren't necessarily structural.
Great, yeah, because I think both the library and the art gallery are built to code, but I don't think, as we know, our population is aging and more people will be on scooters. And it's a bit of a worry that if you can't even literally get into a bathroom in a scooter, having the new building not be accessible for those on motorized transport will be a big issue. So thanks if staff don't mind looking at that. So I'm assuming then we'll have connections between staff and the accessibility.
May I make a comment on that?
Absolutely.
And that is that if the Accessibility Committee is consulted before things are built by way of blueprints, et cetera, then a lot of money can be saved. The situation with the art gallery is the change in the bathroom was made without consultation with the Accessibility Committee, and it made the bathroom, which was, for me, it was the only bathroom in town that I could get into and out of without asking for assistance with the doors. They made the changes, made it not accessible, and in order to make it more accessible by putting some buttons in and widening the entryway would cost, estimated at $25,000. That could have been saved. And my concern with the regional district building in the city of Courtenay, I haven't looked at it, and I haven't seen the blueprints, but I suspect the consultation would have made things more readily accessible and less expensive at that. So that's something that the Accessibility Committee, if they are recognized and consulted with, makes a big benefit, financial benefit for whoever is consulting the city, the regional district, and knowing that the building code is not adequate for accessibility issues.
Great. Thanks, John. Thank you. And thanks to staff for oh, that has now brought up some. Okay, I have Director Frisch.
Well, it was just a quick follow-up, and it's to confirm that your committee is still meeting once a month. And so are you prepared to take on more consultation or referrals, I suppose, as they were?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it could be a floodgate if
Bring it on.
bring it on.
Great. And Director Arbour.
Thank you. And since the chair brought it up, Dr. Teos and I are sitting on the Vancouver Island Library Executive, and there's a big reno coming to the Courtenay Library, so we have a meeting next week, so I'm sure we can commit to do a check-in with them about the plans for the Courtenay Library if you guys haven't engaged with them yet.
Great. Thank you. We'd love to hear a follow-up on that, too. Thanks. All right.
May I make one more sort of announcement? As Arjina has said, I've been taking people on scooter tours, and in order to do that, I borrow a scooter. And it's available, and I'm planning to return it within the next couple of weeks. And if I'm really lucky, I will be able to borrow it again in the spring when the weather is more conducive to pleasant travels. So if anybody wants to go on a scooter, they need to contact me in the next couple of weeks in order to arrange that.
Right. Thank you, John. And highly recommend this tour of Courtenay. And you get a whole new appreciation for bike lanes, for the separated bike lanes and their usefulness for accessibility too. So thank you for that offer. I have, Director Theos.
Thank you very kindly, Chair. Yes, thanks for the presentation. We did see it in Courtenay, which was, I'm hopeful that the Elderberry one, as Director Frisch was mentioning, would be something that we would have already done, but I'm sure it's going to be looked at within a timely manner. But it's interesting about the amount of projects that could come forward, and when the question of the floodgates opening, really that could actually be overwhelming for your group. I know you'd want to get through it as fast as possible, but again, for the people that are actually developing, we know that for the accessibility organizations that this is critical, and I would assume there is only certain commercial projects or city projects that you'd be interested in. You wouldn't be interested in residential ones, but more neighborhoods. But
Certainly, we're interested in big developments, housing developments, that have tons of houses with one step or two steps, that there's nothing visitable in the neighborhood, you know? I mean, we're always hoping for a certain percentage of visitable new home construction
Yeah.
in any subdivision.
And I'm wondering to myself if there is, so it doesn't get to the point where you do get inundated with quite a few projects
Nope.
and any projects get held up as a result. I wonder if that preempting, having that conversation beforehand and maybe even sitting down with developers, which you already may be doing, but, having standards set out, and so then they have, because I think what the developers generally ask for is to have an idea of what we're looking for before we go into conversations with them. So if we get to that stage where we have some standards because your organization knows what is best for the people that are in need with the challenges, and so if that's laid out clearly, then we can actually present that to the developers
Well,
at the
that would
beginning.
be our wish, because I believe
That'd be
that there's
great.
been times that we've wanted to meet with developers, and this isn't in the recent past, but something is in my brain that they have not been interested,
Okay.
basically,
Okay.
because they've got their plans and they want to just do what.
Okay, well, that's
plans are.
good to know.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Director Grant.
So just on that vein, I think that in Courtney, I know we do now, because I think we followed your lead, was to do a neighborhood, like the developers go out to the neighborhood and talk to them about what they'd like in this in any project that they're doing. And perhaps it would be pretty simple to put you guys on that list, and then you can come out, because they don't necessarily have a predetermined plan at that point. And that might be the time to
Yeah.
engage with them. So maybe you could just be put on that referral
I mean,
list.
personally, I'd be interested, happy to. I can't speak for the rest of the members of the committee, but I can speak for myself.
So it sounds like the municipalities have some homework that
It's
you've
in your
given us.
court, ball's in your court
Great.
now.
Thank you. Thanks,
Okay,
Judy.
thanks.
Great. Do we receive all of the delegation? Okay. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next, we have a delegation from the Youth Ecological Restoration Program. Motion to receive? Moved and seconded. Wendy?
Yeah, there's a video. So I only should speak for 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'll speak first.
Sure. Okay.
Give me 2.5.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks to Edwin for suggesting that I come to present to the Committee of the Whole. And I created the Youth and Ecological Restoration Program in 2004, and it's been funded by the Ministry of Children and Family Development. I've also received some funding in partnership with CVRD Parks. Doug DeMarzo has been very supportive, and we have I have a phase 1, and youth work with me 20 hours, 4 different local environmental organizations. We work with Mars, we work with Oyster River Enhancement. I need to be careful about how long I speak, because the video, I have a short video to show you at 7 minutes. And so in phase 2, we work with biologists, and we've done ecological inventories for CVRD parks. For example, Seal Bay, we did one in Meldus Marsh, started that in 2002. We also did in Wildwood and Interpretive Forest, in Headquarters Park, Driftwood Marine, New Trent River Park, which I don't think it's established yet, but we did work there, Nymph Falls and Seal Bay. I've also received grant and aid from CVRD since 2013, and we've done some CVRD parks like Bear Creek Nature Park. I've got a little research project going at the headwaters of Millard Creek and set up long-term monitoring there. I've got basically 10 years of water quality and quantity monitoring that I set up because I have a background in that sort of thing, and it's just, I like a bit of a data geek, I guess, but I just find it really interesting. It's a good solid database too, to have long-term monitoring to see what if there's anything that development happens, then we'll know if there's any impacts.
That's 3 minutes.
Oh, that's 3 minutes? Oh, my goodness. Okay, so the film has been funded by our community. I raised $9,350. City Courtney was granted the program $2,000 for it. Anyway, I better let you show the film.
Okay. All right. That's coming up.
What's that? I created Youth in Ecological Restoration about 15 years ago, and my vision was to get youth out into nature to build healthy relationships with the natural world. I just let nature guide the process, and whatever is going on is the teaching for that day. That's a cutthroat trout, because they have a slash on the jaw. They're quite heavily spotted. A rainbow trout would be not spotted.
It's calm. You can sit out there and look at things, and you can be peaceful, and it helps you with a lot of stuff.
It's like ecotherapy. It helps calm the kids down, it improves their sense of well-being. They get to step out of the school and their family life, and it's just them being immersed in the natural world. One of the favorite places where the youth go is up to Oyster River. It's a very strong salmon enhancement program that they have. It's actually one of the best in the province of British Columbia. So there's an intergenerational aspect and mentoring that occurs.
I never realized there were so many nice people in this community. I'm so used to seeing the same people every single day that it's nice to meet new people.
Mars takes injured animals and brings them here, and they rehabilitate them so that maybe one day they can go back to the wild and live their normal bird life. I've learned that I like animals way more than I thought I did, and it's been very fun.
Just go ahead. The Comox estuary is an incredibly diverse place. In the springtime at low tides, we count herons and eagles there. The youth learn about scientific data collection and behavioral observations. For completion of phase 1 of the program, the youth do a presentation for our community group, and I allow them to choose where they're most comfortable.
Chest leaders.
When I first came to the program, I was really scared. Honestly, I was terrified of being near any animals, but this past couple weeks I've been growing closer to Wendy and the animals and learning more. I want to do this program because I thought it would be fun, and I get to do things I couldn't do otherwise.
There's a phase 2 of the program, and with phase 1, I'll let any youth start doing the program. With phase 2, they have to show a certain level of responsibility. There's 2 youth that work together with a biologist and myself, learning advanced ecological inventories, scientific data collection, and communication skills.
So it's going to be just about a fifth of the way from that corner.
I really admire nature. I like being outside a lot. It's nice and quiet, and you can hear a branch crack, and the sound of birds is really calming too. I just do it because it's a fun thing to do, and there's a lot of perks that come with it. It's really good job experience, because I would really want to get a job in something like just nature and animals and stuff like that.
For completion of phase 2, the youth lead a public tour. They do it together. We spend a whole day preparing for the tour, and then on the final day they give the tour.
A ton of black speckles all over.
They find their voice. It's like their personalities come out, and it's incredible to watch their transformation from being quiet and nervous to just being really strong and confident in themselves.
And oxygen, salmon can suffocate.
I'm out here because I'm interested in science and marine biology and the ecosystem. It's just a lot more interesting and fascinating than being stuck at home or stuck in a classroom.
In the fall, one of my favorite things to do with the youth is put them in a pair of chest waders and hike up a creek with them looking for spawning salmon.
I've just learned a whole bunch about fish and trees and just how everything ties together in nature.
Always talked about on the news and all over the internet as global warming and everything, and it's really nice to help out the environment, keep it going. And I've always loved to go out into the wilderness and watch animals and just stay out there with them. And it's always very nice to just be in a peaceful place.
Hey, my name's Nick. I chose this program because I wanted to be outdoors. I wanted to be trying new things, stuff I hadn't thought about doing before, and I definitely got that out of it so far.
We're really fortunate here in the Comox Valley, and we still have streams where salmon are coming back to spawn in their natural habitat, and it's critical that we protect these wild spaces for them.
I would recommend this program to anybody. And you'll just feel much better about yourself, like personally. This program has definitely increased my connection to nature by a lot because I'm actually in nature.
You're actually there in the moment, learning about what you're seeing and feeling.
In school, we have salmon in our fish tanks, but out here, we get to actually see them more, we get to catch them, and we get to have a lot more fun.
It's a lot more hands-on, there's a lot more freedom, kind of catered a bit more to you as a person instead of a whole demographic of 30 kids.
As I've been observing like people in general, they've become more antisocial as they don't really need to leave the house at all. But if you take a moment to watch nature, you'll begin to understand it better, I think.
When I'm outside with nature and stuff like that, I'm like interacting and helping out and how to take care of that and how to like help with that. And like that kind of stuff is what I'm kind of learning how to do right now.
I like doing things that other people are doing around me because it feels like I'm contributing to something that will lead to a bigger thing in the future.
Jack and you. Yeah, I mean, because this is all part of learning how we're documenting the cedar growth here.
Great video.
Questions?
Oh, I'm sure there's going to be lots. I have Director Grant.
Thanks. I was just wondering, how would a kid get involved in this? And is there an age restriction? Or?
There's, the ages are 12 to 18. It's also for vulnerable youth at risk.
Okay.
And I get referrals mainly from schools, counselors. I'm constantly having to work at getting referrals, though. You'd think they'd beat a path to my door, but it's part of my job to keep the awareness of the program up.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
Yeah.
So is it strictly limited to youth at risk?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless you want to pay me separate.
Yeah, well, there
the
you go.
program.
Maybe. Right. How much?
Well, we'd have to talk about that. I'm not cheap.
Director Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks for the presentation. I was just going to also ask about, the at-risk, youth that get into your program. But I guess instead I'll just thank you for the work you're doing. And I'm a big supporter of, obviously, people of all ages being out and having access to nature so that they can find that space to just relax and heal and all the other things we have to do as human beings. So thanks.
You're welcome.
Great. And Director Grieve.
Thank you, and thank you, Wendy, for taking the effort to come here, and we're easily entertained, as you can see. I I know we've talked about it before, about presenting, and I'm just so happy you did it. Now, I understand that some of these kids have actually gone on to higher education and are working in the field or related fields. Is that so?
I can't cite, off the top of my head, but on my website, there's annual reports, and every year I include like the 5 different main goals of the program. And I'll look at they are building healthy community relationships, gaining valued work experience, improving ecological knowledge, increasing personal and social skills, and enhancing communication skills. And what I usually do is I interview the youth at the end of each day, beginning of the program, at the end of the program. And because in the beginning, we went through Queen Alexandra Foundation for Children, and they hired an evaluation consultant, and basically I used her as much as I could to help me set it up and set up an evaluation plan. And that was one of the things to interview, to get quantitative data. And so I have quotes every year. It's quite a process going through 24 files to cherry pick the good quotes. But I think it's worth it because then it's their voices that are coming through. So the annual reports all have new quotes. And also at the suggestion of Doug Hillian, when he was working for MCFT, I started interviewing parents and caregivers. And there's also quotes and reports included with that. And I did one long-term, like a follow-up study, and I'm sort of in the process of doing another one right now. And some of the longer comments from longer-term kids. I mean, now I've got 15 years, so some of the kids that I can interview they were they're 30 now, for heaven's sake, so. It's that's one of the strengths, there's lots of strengths of the program. I could go on and on, but is to have that data to show what the kids are saying. There's a lot of strength in that.
Thank you very much.
Great. Director Cole Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks so much for the presentation, Wendy. It sounds like you're saying that the sort of 24, 25 youth per year, roughly.
Yeah, including phase 2, yeah.
And we saw mostly kind of look like elementary and junior high students. Do you get a fairly equal representation throughout the age groups?
I would say it was more junior, and well, it's more like around the middle range of the 12 to 18, really. I don't get a lot of the upper end, like the senior grades. I mean, that would be 17, 18 years old, but I do. We also get referrals through the Community Justice Center that the youth have to initiate, of course.
And I was wondering, do you find you're getting good support from the school district in terms of making sure that counselors and people in all the different schools know what you've got available?
Not really. I always have to work at it. I used to get a lot of referrals through Lake Trail. Now I'm not getting so much. And the one that was sending most of them to me, she's not working there anymore. And I used to get a lot through Glacier View in the beginning. I'm not getting very many now. Just a change over staff and different ways that people want to do things in the school system. But I always have to work at it, and that, it used to frustrate me, but I just, like I said, I realize it's part of my job, so I'm always having to promote it, always, yeah.
Okay, well, I appreciate how tenacious you're being and making sure that it continues. The message
well,
continues
that's one
to
of
get
my
there.
middle names.
And thanks for sharing the film. It was a pleasure.
Director Swift.
Thank you. Thanks so much for your program. I wasn't aware of it until just now, and it looks fabulous. I saw a lot of one-on-one work, and also you've indicated they work with organizations. So is it a lot of one-on-one while you figure out where the student fits? And then the other piece of that is, what is the time commitment for the student?
It's strictly one-on-one. I don't work with groups of kids. I work with one at a time. We work with groups of community volunteers. And Oyster River Enhancement Society has 30 elders that show up every Tuesday morning. One of the kids said they were like a clan of salmon grandpas. So it was pretty special. We have to add that. Yeah, and then there's times when I'm just walking up a creek with them. You know, I try to balance that out because youth at risk, they need to have positive mentors in their life. And, you know, it might be short term, but there's a lot of power in having the elders, you know, help them, explain things to them, and, you know, and the best thing that I can do is get them involved in a group of people and step back and let them be with positive people that care for them, right? And so the time commitment is 20 hours, which includes the presentation to the community group. Yeah, and I mentioned the annual reports, and also have all the ecological reports that we ever did are on the website too. And I have an appendix at the end that is a list of all the groups that we worked with. It's up to 153. I think there's 10 referral places, about 30 environmental groups that we work for, and the rest are all community presentations. So, and the phase 2 is more like 25 hours because we put extra time into helping them prepare for the tour. We do 3 days of field work, ecological inventory, fish population estimates, whatever the work is that we're doing. And Millard-Piercy Watershed Stewards is a group that has supported, I think, about 4 now, different projects. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. I had a few questions myself. So it sounds like some of the issues maybe you're facing are constantly needing to find referrals and find youth to join. I'm assuming funding would always be nicer to have some more money, or are you okay?
Well, I am right now, but I'm, you know, I'll be 65 next year, and it's time for me to start stepping back and letting, you know, someone else do some of the work. It's getting more challenging for me to hike up creeks and chest waders. I don't walk the lengths of streams that I used to, and you know, so I have a young man that has been volunteering with me on Mondays for 4 years. To monitor downstream migration of salmon for the Solon River Restoration Society and their rotary screw trap. And I've known him since he's 9. He's 35 now, and he says it's his dream job. So you know, he's on the top of the list for succession. And I see, you know, my role, you know, stepping back more and. You know, he doesn't have very good writing skills, and I have pretty good writing skills myself. So, you know, I mean, really, anytime I ask people for money for my program, they just give it to me. Nice. You know. So yeah.
You know, I think people recognize the amazing work both on the ecological side and supporting youth at risk.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to.
Yeah, and one of the strengths of that is documenting it in a really good way. You know. And I mean, you can talk to your blue in the face and say, like, you know, oh, this is really good, you know, but you gotta prove it through you know, writing it up in a good way.
Right. Well, I'm wondering if we, as a CVRD, could take advantage of some of your work. I mean, you're already working in CVRD parks in Seal Bay, and as you know, we have a new parking lot and some new signage that will be going in. I'm just wondering if if you're involved in any of the work that we're doing with the new trails. I don't know if Doug can answer.
We're not. I mean, yeah, I have to be kind of careful about, you know, I mean, because kids don't want to just, like, you know, pick up garbage and stuff like that, but just in a way that's educational for them, you know. Yeah. But yeah, I'd certainly be open to doing more work with the CVRD. I'm very pleased with the relationship with Doug and the staff for the Community Services branch. It's been just excellent. Nothing but amazing support there for sure. Thanks, Doug.
Yeah, because we do have some new, we'll have an opening, I think, sometime in the spring. So it would be nice to see, you know, the youth who are already in the park probably be at that event as well, if we could.
Well, I don't know. They probably wouldn't come out with me. That's an extra thing, right? It's
that's true.
You know, I can't phone them up and say, well, I could try, but I know they won't come. It's just like, oh, I know you finished the program. Can you come out to this? It's like, I think I'm busy, you know.
Well, yeah.
On Facebook or, you know, something, Xbox or.
So the other thing, we are doing some monitoring of our watershed Are
Oh, I
you
love that stuff.
Are you involved in the Comox Lake, the work that, or
No.
do you work in the Comox Lake watershed right now
No.
with the youth? Okay.
No, I love doing, I mean, that's part of my background is long-term monitoring.
Yeah.
Don't get me going on that one. It'll be another hour or
Okay,
so.
all right. I'm just going to put it out there and see. Great. Well, thanks. I don't see any more questions, so thank you for your presentation.
Okay, thanks for the opportunity. I'm very happy to be here and let you know more about the program.
Great.
Okay. And check out the website, youthecology.ca. It's on the back of the brochure. If you want more brochures, let me know.
Thank you. So on receipt, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. And now we have Bunny Shannon and Betty Tate from the Comox Valley Social Planning Society.
Hi, thank you for having us. We're happy to be here to tell you about the Comox Valley Social Planning Society. So what is social planning? This definition is from the BC government website under local government planning. It goes on to give some examples, such things as housing, food security, crime and safety, accessibility and inclusion, universal design in planning, healthy built environments, parks and recreation, and other things that are considered under the umbrella of social planning areas of work that we have in common. Here's a short history of the Social Planning Council in the Comox Valley. 1990, the mayors of the valley identified priorities as Comox Valley youth and community planning in 1990. Over the next 5 years, the committee hosted forums on public participation in community planning, youth violence, and participated in OCP processes. In 1996, the group incorporated in BC. We began regular brown bag lunches that were intended to bring individuals and groups together to discuss issues related to housing, official community planning, recreational access, home support, and the Parental Responsibility Act. This has evolved to an annual brown bag lunch for social service agencies to discuss current issues, challenges, and opportunities. So the main benefit of these meetings now is networking. In the year 2000, the Society hosted a Community Development Institute that brought together groups from all over Vancouver Island, and it included people from other parts of Canada as well, to discuss and strategize around topics related to social planning in local communities. In 2002, we secured funding to do a quality of life report. We hired researchers and did reports in 2002, 2004, 2009, and 2014. In 2015, the quality of life reports evolved into vital signs reports. And we have worked in partnership with the Community Foundation on the 2016 and 2018 Vital Signs reports. In 2016, a strategic planning process resulted in a new vision, principle, mission, and action plan, which is coming up on the next slide. Although we have no official status with local governments, several locally elected officials have regularly attended meetings between 1996 and 2016. Then in 2018, after the local elections, every local government except the Comox First Nations appointed a representative to the Comox Valley Social Planning Society, which we were very happy about, and we want to build on these relationships to engage in collaboration together. We are currently working on engaging the Comox First Nations.
Great, and I'm going to take over now. I'm Betty Tate, by the way, and this is Bunny Shannon. We should have introduced ourselves, although you probably already know. We've both been here before. I'm not going to read that off, but from that strategic planning process, that's the foundational principle, our vision, and our mission of this social planning society. More important are our actions, and so I'm just going to do a quick overview of some of the things that are on our action planning for 2019. First one, and really why we're here, is to enhance relationships and collaborate with local governments. And to that end, that I'm going to talk about a bit later, is we're having a workshop on November 7th. You should have all got a letter, and we're actually here to do a personal invite to that workshop. We've also been engaged with the BC Living Wage for Families organization for the last 3 years, and they support communities all over BC to calculate living wage for their community. And for that, it's a living wage for a family of 4, 2 adults working and 2 children, 1 in elementary school and 1 in preschool, and 1 of the adults going to school. So I just need to be really clear that the living wage that we calculate is for that demographic, and it can't be generalized to anybody in the Comox Valley. It would be very different for a single person. And because one of the calculations that comes into that is the new childcare benefits that have come in, which actually impacted the living wage in our community. It is lower in 2019 than 2018, and that's because of those healthcare benefits, which, of course, if you're a couple without children, you don't get. So I don't want it to be taken as everybody's living wage. But for this year, it was calculated at $15.97 an hour, and we're just beginning a campaign to encourage local governments, larger businesses, probably we're talking with the chamber about putting an ask out to businesses to consider becoming certified as living wage employees. And there's a lot of information on the website, and all that information is in a letter that I think you're receiving today too. So if there's any questions about that, we can answer those today too. And then we have been initiating meetings with social planning groups all across the island, and that's really coming together too. In the last year, it feels like there's sort of this whole synchronicity or something around social planning that's happening. So Bunny and I met in June with social planning groups, or actual in municipal social planners from Victoria, Couch, and Nanaimo. I don't want to leave anyone out. Ourselves, Comox Valley, Campbell River, and Powell River. Some of them, they're all various sort of organizations for that, or structures. Some of them are nonprofit societies like we are, and some of them are planning department positions in planning departments, some called social planning, some called housing, some called whatever. And unfortunately, we're the only one that's still operating all on volunteers with no funding, but we're still carrying on. And then the other thing that's on our action plan that we've been engaged in right now is engaging with the federal candidates. And we did a briefing note on poverty reduction and sent it to all the candidates. And it's been endorsed by the Community Health Network and Lush Valley Food Action Society. And we have submitted questions on poverty reduction to the All Candidates Forums. The brown bag lunches continue. We are collaborating with the Comox Valley Community Health Network. There's a lot of internet interaction and a lot of common interest between the two groups. And it's possible that we're going to be taking on the poverty reduction priority action with them. And then we're also looking at Oh, I should mention too, with the Community Health Network, this is back, so it connects with the federal candidates. We have organized an Eat, Think, Vote event, which is this coming Thursday for local candidates, and the focus is food security. So it's only about food security is the only topic for the candidates. And we're also working at increasing our membership and communication strategies. So that's kind of it. 1 minute. Okay, I'm good. I'm at it. So basically, you got a letter. Here's the invitation. We are having this social planning workshop. It's from 1 to 7 on November the 7th. There's the purpose. We are collaborating. Spark BC is coming to facilitate this. They're doing these similar workshops, again, in other communities around the province. And we just think we want to explore possibilities, kind of like the Accessibility Committee, actually, in terms of how we can be engaged with local government. Location. And the location, oh yeah, sorry, is that what it's in their letter. Where is it? Is that what you're saying to me? Yeah. It's at the Courtney Lawn Bowling Club in Courtney. And we'll feed you dinner. And then this is Eat, Think, Vote. So again, if you're interested in coming out to that, I mentioned that October 10th, 11:45 to 1:15 at the Lewis Center in Courtney. And any questions? That's our information, our website, our Facebook, and email contacts for both of us.
Great, thank you. So we already have some questions. Director Fresh.
Yeah, thanks again, Chair. Thanks for the presentation, guys. Look, I think I could possibly attend this. What's the relationship with the Comox Valley Health Network and this workshop? Is there all tied together?
Yes, they will be there. Actually, they're part of it, and we're bringing forward the priorities from the Community Health Network and looking at them, and then looking at, because one of the things we don't want to do is create more priorities in our community. It's been done, but also bring in what the priorities are from the local government. So yes, they will be engaged in that workshop.
So, and can I ask about the agenda for the day, what that might involve in general? High level?
I should have brought it. You're challenging me, David.
Well, you can get back to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and we should send it out, right? It's probably, yeah, but it's basically, Spark is going to be doing, it'll be a little bit of intro overview. It's interactive, it's not people talking to you, but Scott from Spark is actually going to talk about social planning and the relationship with local government and what's happening around the province. Then we're going to talk about what's happening in the Comox Valley. That's part of what Lindsay's going to talk about, the CHN. And then we want to talk, asking you, and there'll be small group discussions around what are local government priorities, what kind of things and then the end of it will be what kind of things out of that could we maybe collaborate on, or what kind of actions could we take together, or how can social planning be helpful, how can the CHN be helpful in terms of engagement, consultation, anything like that. So whatever comes out of it, comes out of it.
Yeah, it sounds like a great networking opportunity, so
yeah.
Thanks very much.
Great.
And that is off the top of my head.
Alternate Director McCollum.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation and for all the work that you guys are doing in the community. I just wanted to make a quick comment that I appreciate that breakdown of the living wage. I've read about the living wage, and you hear it referred to regularly, and I do remember reading about it coming down, but I had never heard that it's based on a 2-income household with 2 children. And just curious, do you know what the discrepancy would be for, say, a 1? Like, is there a calculation that's been done for a single parent household? I'm just curious.
We did it because we were really concerned, actually, how low it is. The other issue happened to be us that did the calculations, and you have to do what is done all around the province. And there's actually, that was one of the things that came up at our island-wide. There's another couple other communities on the island that are saying, this is really low and we're not sure about, and it gets taken up as the living wage. We actually did calculate for here, and I don't have it exactly, but without the child benefits, it was $20 and something was the living wage. And the other major issue is it's really hard to get the housing price data. We really went, no, housing is way more than that in the valley. But yeah, the standard that they use is low. And we actually argued to up it and actually looked at rents on Facebook and did a calculation that way. So our housing went up, but it didn't go up enough. The housing is really low in it.
Yeah, I find that figure quite surprising, actually, based on a household of 4. So that's good to hear that reflected.
And it's also based on the market basket rate for food, which is also minimum.
Yeah. Is that based on BC prices, or is it actually for Vancouver Island? Because I often hear
I think it's a BC market basket, and that's the federal poverty line measure now, right?
I see. And I'm curious if what the uptake has been like with going out to business, or is that something that's coming?
It's coming. We're starting with you.
Okay.
You're the leaders.
Great. Thank you.
We were going to do it earlier, and then the federal election kind of took us off, and also there's, it's silly season, so we kind of, but actually Arzina said, maybe there's some will there, so send the letter now to CVRD, so we have.
And we will be discussing it later in the agenda today. So good timing for your delegation as well, if you can stay. Director Grieve.
Thanks. Thank you all for coming. Of course, as somebody that's been involved in this, I guess, since I first got elected, I just wonder if you think you've seen a change out there in the awareness of what social planning really is. And if you had a wish list, what would be the thing that you would see as the most effective way of facilitating social planning in the Comox Valley?
Do we want to answer that? You're preempting the workshop, I think. I mean, we have long thought that we would like a social planning position somewhere in the valley in local government. There are other really good models, though, that are more arm's length, and some of those are starting to be developed around other areas, like housing or the food policy, that are more arm's length. But whatever it is, our biggest wish is that there's a strong connection and that we collaborate and we work together, and that we know a lot about what's going on in the community and where the issues are and what's and it's, from my experience in the community earlier, and I only came to the community 15 years ago, is pretty disconnected when I first got involved with social planning from local government. See a big shift. I think part of that shift is because the need is so much greater. It started with housing, and it's gone to other areas of poverty's increased, child poverty, all of those things that are social things. So I think there's a more, new people, different people, more commitment to it. So certainly long in the social planning meetings, people have said, we need money for social planning. We need a social planner. We need to do this.
So somebody to bring
it together.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of different ways to do that. I don't want to say there's only one way to do that. I don't want that.
Can I say?
Yeah, of course.
I think since the new election, since the election, I think it's been a sea change in our community, in all of our communities. I'm just so pleased with what we have now. It's just great for me to see.
And Bunny's been involved. She was on the original board in 1996. So She's been here doing this for.
You must have been in high school at the time.
Way to go. Director Arbour.
We'll have to assume that you meant since the provincial election. No, just. Just a quick point that you brought up the kind of gap in knowledge around nailing down the housing, and I'm sure you're aware that we're about to start on the housing needs assessment. So I just want to make sure that either for our staff to connect with our consultants or for you guys to connect in, so you have the right granularity in terms of the data that is useful for the living wage, because I think that concept has really captured the public's imagination, and the more we can strengthen the data behind it, the better. So
Definitely.
it sounds like from your nodding, it sounds like you're totally connected into that.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I actually met with the two consultants
Good.
today with the Community Health Network. This is another place where we connect, and we were actually talking about social planning and how we can support them to get the word out. And yeah,
Awesome.
So yes, we have connected.
Great question. Director Frisch.
Yes, sorry to take up so much time, but as you probably have heard, a lot of us are really working on co-op housing right now. And so I hope we could fit that into the discussion, because I think we definitely want to connect with the community and build support and understanding for that model.
Yep.
And also, I just wanted to follow up on the Community Health Network, and wondering if you could see that group as being that connected social planning group, that's tied to government. Because we already are tied to it in a certain way, and it does encompass, I think it encompasses everything you're talking about, but maybe I'm missing something.
It does, and it doesn't. But yes, the Community Health Network is relatively new, and we're just working out these relationships. I don't think they're one and the same, but I do think there'll be a close relationship. And as I said, I think it probably will be around the poverty reduction action that we're already, with the living wage and everything, that's already starting. And so I think that could very well be formalized in the next, the Community Health Network is just completing their strategic plan. But in the same way that we have for the housing, we have the Community Health Network has a relationship with the Coalition to End Homelessness for early childhood, partnership with the Comox Valley Early Years Collaborative. I see it evolving into the social planning group being one of those partners.
Okay, well, look forward to working on it. Thanks.
Yeah.
I don't see any more questions, so just want to thank both of you for your presentation, and thanks for coming.
Thank you so much, and all the work you do.
Just want to take the temperature around the table. We could break for dinner now, or we could have one more presentation from BC Transit. How are people feeling? One more? Okay. Anyone?
Can we take like a 2-minute bathroom break?
Sure. Oh, and we should move on receipt, sorry. So all in favor of receipt? Anyone opposed? Carried. So how about, we'll give you 2 minutes for bathroom break, and then we'll go for BC Transit. All right, I'm going to call the meeting back to order. And I'd like to welcome BC Transit to come and present on their transit future plan overview. Move received. Second.
Hi there, everyone. Sounds like it's calmed down out there. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Adriana McMillan. I'm a senior transit planner with BC Transit, and I'm going to share some information with you this evening about the Transit Future Action Plan. And so with that, we'll just jump into it. So in 2014, the Comox Valley Regional District endorsed and adopted the Transit Future Plan, which is a 25-year-long strategic long-range transit planning document. It's kind of the transit analogy of an official community plan. It does tend to be a little bit more applied, particularly in the shorter term. So what that transit plan sets out is a vision for what transit ridership will be like in the future. And at the time in 2014, we set out a mode share target of about 3% by 2038. And based on that mode share target, we defined a number of different service priorities, which are shown in green there, and also infrastructure priorities for the short term. And the regional district has been making excellent progress towards adopting your different service priorities. There has been nearly annual service increases happening in the system. You've got your frequent transit network established. That's your new Route 1. And there's been really great progress happening throughout that. But now we're getting to a point in time that you've made such good progress in checking off your priorities that it's time to look at and see what's next. And so with that, we are launching the Transit Future Action Plan process, and that's basically Transit Future Plan 2.0. The branding is Transit Future Action Plan, and we have a really nice baseline of priorities that are still on the tail end of your previous plan that we will be using as the foundation for this next plan. And again, we will be looking at developing new service priorities and also new infrastructure priorities. You'll notice I've bolded some of the infrastructure priorities there, and those are things that we'll want to reassess and make sure that they're still important for the community. Also, as part of the Transit Future Action Plan, we'll be reviewing your mode share targets. We've heard that there's interest from some members here to go for something that's a little more ambitious. We'll also be reviewing all of the more recent local government land use and transportation plans. So most recently, the City of Courtenay has completed its transportation master plan. We also have your regional growth strategy and the official community plans and a number of other related land use documents from local governments across the region that we'll be looking at. So the sections of the plan, this plan starts off with a revised mode share target. That revised mode share target will then inform the kinds of service change priorities that we'll be working towards. So that's expansions of service hours, potential routes, new routes, route changes, the frequencies and service spans of different routes. And then those service change priorities will then determine the kinds of fleet needs and infrastructure that you will be required to support those. Also, in time with that, those different infrastructure and fleet requirements also constrain how far we can advance the different service changes. So, you know, if we approve an hours expansion, but we don't have enough space at a transit exchange for all of the buses to be there, then we can't proceed with that hours expansion. So working with all of those service and infrastructure priorities in order is very important. And then lastly, the Transit Future Action Plan will also lay out information priorities. It's 2019. The world is moving slowly away from paper only. And so we want to get a sense of what kind of a universe of information we'd be looking forward to over the coming years for the Comox Valley Regional Transit System. And on the infrastructure side, you know, that's something that we work with very closely with the local governments. Bus stops are, you know, a key element of the transit service. Things like curb drops that we heard earlier today are also a key element of making sure that your transit service is accessible. All of our buses are accessible. They all kneel. Whether people can access those buses is reliant on the kinds of bus stop infrastructure that's out there for them to get to those bus stops and then get on the buses themselves. So in terms of the timeline, it's about a year-long process, and so each of the timing points for board presentations are shown there. So right now, we're just at that very first one. We've provided the terms of reference to the regional district staff, and we're beginning to do some review and analysis of the existing transit system and some of the community context. We're hoping to launch into a targeted stakeholder engagement phase in November. And so what that will look like is reaching out to targeted stakeholder groups and inviting them in for workshops. We normally do a couple of workshops during the daytime and also a workshop option in the evening for organizations and individuals who can't necessarily come to a daytime session. The types of stakeholders we would have at these workshops range from local government staff to school district representatives to your accessibility committee representatives, yourselves if you'd like to participate. Elected officials are certainly welcome. And it'll be a very structured 2-hour time commitment. We go through a lot of different considerations for what priorities could be. And then following that, we take that information back and we start developing some concepts. And then right before we come back out for our second phase of public engagement, we'll also be likely doing an onboard transit survey where we have a third-party survey company that will actually ride the buses and do some independent surveying of how the ridership is feeling about the service and what they like to see. Then we'll take that in, refine and finalize our concepts, bring them back out to you for information before we take them out to the general public for open houses where we try and reach as many people as we can and invite their feedback on if we have it right and what we might need to try and tweak or refine better moving forward before we finalize that draft plan document. And the hope is to have a draft document before you sometime into fall of 2020. And yeah, that's the timeline. Let's see, and I think, yeah, that's my piece.
Great. Yeah. Do you want to take questions now?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Director Frisch.
Well, yeah, thanks. That sounds great. About the stakeholder engagement, I know we just spoke about the Comox Valley Health Network. Is it possible that they would be on your list?
Yes, we can certainly add them, yeah.
I think that would be wise. I don't want to make a decision for the board, but it seems, and they have a transportation node or whatnot in the group, so it might be fitting.
And the Social Planning Council. And we will be working very closely with your Transit Management and Advisory Committee in helping to create and refine the stakeholder groups that are invited. It generally tends to be a very, very large number. I think some of our previous processes, we've sent out as many as 200 invitations to bring in a really diverse pool representing a lot of different interests in the community.
Yeah, and one thing I was thinking while you were talking about that was how do we get those people who might not be thinking using the bus onto the bus? And I don't know where you would find those people.
You could try closing a bridge.
Yeah, we could try closing a bridge for a little while, or at least one lane, right? See if that works. Okay, I'll leave it at that. Good luck.
Thanks. Director Arbor.
Can't leave her alone.
Thank you. I've been struggling with transit for 3 weeks since I had my personal aha moment when I was thinking, and I shared with the board, and I think Director Kletcher replied to that, which was, if we have 3% by 2038, transit will make no difference to any of our climate targets, because by then we'll have 100% zero emissions cars and otherwise on the road, and of course, there's other values to transit, and there's the cost of reducing single vehicles. So then I started thinking, I can't get excited about that at all. And so I started looking, and I'm seeing that TransLink has a mode share of target for Metro Vancouver of about 50% by the same deadline. And they're currently sitting at 15%. Now, we're not a big city, we're a small city, so you got to adjust. But at the same time, rural communities have to, we're starting to see smart cities movement, all these different things. And so I'm thinking about the 50% target for the same price. But, in the sense of it's that societal shift in a way. And what I've been thinking in those 2 weeks, I haven't made a lot of progress myself, so I'll need to talk more to lots of people, and colleagues are on the table. But one of the things I've been thinking is maybe for BC for transit to look at it differently, because I think a lot of reason why people have a car in the valley is not necessarily they might do transit for the short term for the short distance stuff in town. But what is lacking, it feels like you don't have a nested model at BC Transit in terms of looking at the island as a whole and looking at the kind of connectivity we need at the other levels. So those kind of linkages with, we just lost the bus depot, but the linkages that right now the private sector is providing, it's not easy for me to get to the ferry. There's just a few opportunities. And so I think a lot of people, for their trips up and down the island, that's why they keep their car. Once they have their car, they're going to use it to go to the sports center. I do, right? So I would love to see something that's not piecing out every regional district into their own, but there's also a strategy for the Vancouver Island commuting and connecting into Vancouver that feeds into our own strategy. I think that's how we might get to something closer to 50%. So that's just my feedback for today.
I certainly hope, Director Arbor, that you come out to one of the workshops. I think it would be wonderful to have you there.
Sounds great.
So, yeah.
It looks like by the number of lights, there's going to be quite a few of us there. So, Director Kettler.
Yeah, I was actually wondering about the ride sharing and how BC Transit has been dealing with that or even considered it. We just finished a week at UBCM, and there was a lot of talk about Uber and Lyft and those services. And I think that, that BC Transit has a real opportunity here. Instead of, really forcing a change of people getting on buses, there's this natural demand for ride sharing. And why wouldn't BC Transit take over such a service rather than have a multinational come in and benefit from that service? Mm-hmm. That service could then be profitable and fund other transit initiatives. And you're not fighting such an uphill battle to force people to give up cars entirely. Mm-hmm. And maybe there's that bridge component toward transit. But I just think that that's something that if we're looking to the future and this is a 25-year plan, that's definitely something that needs to be on the table and considered.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. And some of our more recent strategic plans have definitely been having sections that address mobility as a service, and there really is a whole host of new technologies and modes and methods that are being explored. And I know that the Regional Transit Management Group is looking into that more in the company as well. Frankly, I think our goal is to decrease vehicle kilometers traveled, and it may not be that we can have as radical as a shift as zero-car living, just like that, but it might be we take a household down from being a 3-car household to a 1-car household, or a 2-car household down to a 1-car household. And in what ways can we help make those differences happen? But moving forward, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of questions about how BC Transit can incorporate some of these new technologies and ideas, and whether they are as effective in some of our systems, because a lot of these tend to be in much larger cities, how they can be leveraged in smaller contexts throughout the province. Mm-hmm. So yeah, great point. Thank you.
Thanks.
Director Cole-Hamilton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And thank you so much for the presentation. I'm looking forward to this process. And I'd start by echoing what Director Kettler said. I think that's that's a big thought for the future. And I just wanted to bring up one of the things. We just finished a master transportation plan in Courtenay, and one of the interesting takeaways that I had from that was looking at traffic flows across the 5th Street Bridge, and they peak between 2 and 4 p.m., which is not after work, but it is after school. And I live on that side of the bridge, and I have 2 kids who go to high school on this side of the bridge, and they both have bus passes. And but a lot of people drive their kids to and from school because the routes aren't always convenient. Strangely enough, sometimes the arrival times at school don't actually match the bells, which is, just makes it very difficult to take them. I'd really like to see the coordination with SD71 be a really big central, like one of the big rocks that you put in place first when you're coordinating this. Mm-hmm. Because if we're trying to reduce vehicle traffic, like everyone, the couple of times when I have driven my kids because they've missed the bus and been slow getting ready, I drive all the way across the bridge twice in order to get them across the bridge once. So it's a two-way trip in order to create, deliver someone in one direction. And I think a lot of the congestion we experience could be alleviated if there wasn't that clear, after-school bell time traffic. So I'm really hoping that'll be a great collaboration between BC Transit and the school board.
For sure. Just to give you a little bit of background in terms of how we tend to function with the school districts is we find typically primary school children are not generally very active transit users. Parents are nervous to let them go on the bus or walk to the bus stop by themselves or go from the bus stop into the school by themselves. We do tend to find ridership activity starts to really pick up in middle school and high school. So we're usually very, very careful around coordinating with the bell times for the high schools and the middle schools. I know when we had our last service change in 2017, we did lose some connectivity from West Courtney over to Isfeld, and that's actually something we're looking to address this coming September, which is even before the plan will be complete. So hopefully if that's the direction of travel that you're experiencing some challenges with, we can get to that a little bit sooner than even the end of this plan. And I know there'll be a number of parents throughout the region that will be quite happy with that, because we certainly heard that from some of parents in 2017.
Well, that's great to hear you've already identified that, because I do live in West Courtney and they do go to Isfeld, and that would be fantastic to hear. And it's just another observation is that all three of our high schools are on one side of the river. So it just means that when people are driving kids to and from school, they're crossing bridges twice at peak times. So it's a real driver of congestion.
Interesting.
And in fact, they're all on the same street, actually. If you think about it, all the high schools. Thanks very much.
Yeah. And if I could also add, the loss of connectivity from Vanier to downtown for kids who work after school. That's a comment that I've also heard, that it's very difficult for them to get to their after-school jobs anywhere along Cliff, because the bus goes up to North Island College and then it doesn't come into downtown directly. So they can't get to their after-school jobs fast enough after school. Okay. Director Grieve.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you for coming and making this presentation. Very exciting. We know that in BC and Western Canada in general, with the demise of Greyhound, there is now no affordable, accessible public transportation. We heard at a session at UBCM that was attended by 5 ministers from the province. We heard from the public that, in some northern rural communities that with no bus service, they basically turn every highway into a highway of tears, because there's very few options for some people except to hitchhike. I think Director Arbors alluded to this as well. Claire Trevena, the Minister of Transport, took great pride in boasting that now you can buy a bus ticket in Agassiz and get off at Horseshoe Bay. Now, we have a bus system on Vancouver Island that's disjointed in that we can take a bus to Campbell River, but there's a little space of, I don't know what it is, I think it's 3 kilometers or something between Bowser and our bus service that doesn't connect. So the dream of actually taking a bus to Horseshoe Bay, I brought this up 8 years ago, and it was poo-pooed because, of course, you're going to interfere with the private sector. We have Tofino bus lines, and all these people are going to be doing that, the Island Link and all that, right? Well, anybody's going to take a bus to Horseshoe Bay and stop at every whistle stop along the way. They're only doing it because they have to. So my question would be, when are we going to actually get the kind of connectivity and transportation that we actually need? It seems to be supported at the very, very top of the ladder here. But I keep bringing this up year in, year out. It seems like a no-brainer to me.
That's a really great point. I've had the privilege of working along Highway 16 and with the inter-community bus service along that area. And the Highway 16 bus service does stop at every whistle stop, and that's precisely the point, is to provide accessibility for those small communities. There's also the BC Bus North initiative, which was the long-haul coach service that was put in up north Vancouver Island has been lucky in terms of the inter-community piece that the private sector has filled in some of those gaps, whereas there are many parts of the interior of the province that still haven't had those gaps filled in. So it's definitely a very challenging part, and it's something that I know that the ministry has been working to look at on the Vancouver Island scale. This plan will be very much focused on the Cowichan, or pardon me, the Comox Valley Regional District, but there's certainly space within that to have those expressions of needs around sort of broader connectivity, for sure.
Oh, subsequent?
Okay, also, I worked very hard to try to get some bus service in the northern area, in the rural areas. We were paying, I think the electoral areas were paying into transit to the tune of about 23% and getting 7% of the ridership hours. We also found that the Handy Dart system wouldn't go any further than Huban Road to the north, even though my constituents paid in on this service. So they came up with the deviated infrequent bus service that would deviate from its route, I think 2 kilometers, and pick you up at the gate. So we now have, I think, three buses on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
The flex route, the 13 and 14? Yeah.
But, you know, it just, again, you know, you talk about concentrating at the core and all that. Well, it's great, but it's all being subsidized by the electoral areas.
Yes.
Director Frisch.
Yeah, well, I mean, I haven't heard anything I disagree with, so I won't repeat it all. And I do want to outline how excited I am for this new plan, and I think the exuberance around the table would coincide with that eagerness to see more happen. I wanted to point out 2 things. One, Courtney's reviewing our OCP. Okay. And I just wonder if there's an opportunity for BC Transit to play a role in that. Of course, it's going to deal with land use planning in a big way. And so if you have any information to inform that, it'll be happening over the next year or so.
Yeah, working through the regional district or with the regional district, we'd love to participate in any kind of support or stakeholder opportunities we have. Land use is half the battle, or more than half the battle with raising transit. You know, you want to make sure that people live close enough to get to that transit, and we have the densities to support the transit. Because, you know, you can have a bus every 5 minutes, but if only a handful of people can walk to it or get to it, the service is not necessarily effective. So yeah, the land use piece is huge, and anything I can do to support that, I'm happy to do.
Sure,
So,
and
yeah.
I also wanted to outline my support for the idea of you know, partnerships and with, you know, the ride sharing programs and also car sharing programs. I think this is an important time for BC Transit to assess its long-term plans and make sure that it's still viable in 10 or 20 years. So I'm happy to be part of that when you come to town looking for info. Thanks.
I don't see any other questions around the table, so on receipt, all in favor? Oh, sorry.
There's another
I
half.
apologize.
Pardon me,
Oh, we're
Myrna.
just, you're still got some more. That's half of it. We're already ready to go.
Sorry.
So, yes, please go forward.
Thank you. I'm Myrna Moore. I'm the Senior Regional Manager for BC Transit, and I understand that there were a few members of the board that were at UBCM and had the opportunity to speak with our CEO, Aaron Pinkerton, on electric buses. So I was asked by Scott and Mike to come and speak to it a little bit more for everybody else to hear. This way. So it's a BC Transit Low Carbon Fleet Program. In July, BC Transit announced that we are embarking on a program to enhance our role in the environment. We'll be moving to a fully electric fleet, and by implementing this program, we'll be able to reduce our GHG emissions and support greenhouse gas targets. In the creation of this plan, we had to consider our current fleet replacement plan to ensure that we are getting the most out of the vehicles that we have on the road today. We currently have 1,100 buses on the road across BC and have a plan for an expansion of about 350 more as we add more expansion service in the next 10 years. Our plan is focused on the 4 key principles that you see up there. We will transition our buses to electric propulsion based on the fleet replacement plan in each vehicle classification that we invest in. We will bridge the transition to electric by using fleet, which can take advantage of alternative low-carbon-based fuels. All of our investment decisions will be guided by business cases, which will evaluate options with a sustainable lens, and we will establish essential partnerships to make this happen. When we buy a bus, we will have that bus in our system for up to 13 years. Over the next 10 years, we will need to make substantial investment in our fleet, replacing those 1,100 buses and the 350 more for expansion. Those replacement requirements are different for the different vehicle classifications that we use. Each of our vehicle classifications has a distinct pathway to electrification. The timing of that electrification is in alignment to our vehicle replacement needs. Our heavy-duty buses make up the majority of our entire fleet, outside of TransLink, of course. And in our analysis, we'll be able to make the greatest GHG reduction gains through the electrification of the heavy-duty fleet. Each of the pathways that you see there identify that we will continue to do research and deploy small fleets, and when we would prepare for the full deployment of electric vehicles in those classifications. As an example, it's our goal that by 2023, we will only invest in heavy-duty electric buses. We will no longer purchase heavy-duty diesel buses. So that just gives you a little bit more ideas about the different types. Electric heavy-duty, electric high-capacity, which is your double-decker, your light-duty, which is your community buses that you see for Handy Dart, and then the medium-duty, which you also have about 10 of those in Comox Valley. So in terms of the next steps, while we go through the transition period and before we start purchasing only electric buses, we will take advantage of technologies that are already cleaner and reduce our emissions over diesel fleets. Only compressed natural gas buses are planned to replace and expand the heavy-duty and medium-duty buses until their transition to electrification. Currently, CNG bus fleets are in the regional district of Nanaimo, Whistler, and Kamloops. And Victoria and Abbotsford will be having CNG buses added to their fleet next year in 2020. So the next steps, what are we going to do? Well, we're working on the deployment of the first 10 long-range electric buses that we announced in July, and those will be for Victoria in 2021. The RFP for that's just starting to get underway. We're working with Fortis BC to identify renewable natural gas options that will help with the other CNG bus fleets that we're looking at. Working with BC Hydro to undertake energy capacity assessments at our transit centres and helping to provide input into the development of a rate structure for transportation. We've been information sharing and also working with TransLink on a request for information about electric bus technology. And in the future, we will be undertaking a joint RFP to purchase electric buses with them to gain the economies of scale with the volume. So as we work through this process, we'll certainly keep you up to date, the staff and your board. Right now, and I'm sure you heard most of this from Aaron Pinkerton at UBCM, we are in the process of hiring a program director just for this low carbon fleet program. When that individual's on board, we'll have more understanding of how that's going to start to flesh out. But there's a lot of work to be done, research to be done. The RFP, the vendor process has to be done. So stay tuned. We'll try and get information as it becomes more refined and share it with your team. So happy to take any questions if you have any.
Great, and there are. Director Arbour.
Thank you, and thank you. That's great. That was such a great announcement. Just two questions. One is, so I guess, has hydrogen been looked at all for the long term, or did you guys just commit to electric?
There was an exercise with hydrogen in 2010 when the Olympics happened in Whistler.
Yeah.
I can't really speak to the valuation of that project, but it happened for about 3 to 5 years. I don't have the results, but we did not continue on with the hydrogen fuel cell bus.
Okay,
I could get more information through staff if that's something.
That's fine. I just know in the vehicle sector, they expect at some point that hydrogen's going to start to catch up to electric. So I'm just that's not a problem for me. Both are great.
Okay.
And then the second question, maybe more important, is how do you perceive the financing? Like who is going to, obviously those buses quite cost currently almost double normal diesel buses. And so what will be the cost impact, or have you started doing some analysis, or is just a commitment and then it'll cost what it'll cost?
Well, there is some analysis that has been done. And my understanding in terms of the investment in the infrastructure, the Canada Plan, ICIP, is part of this. It's certainly with the rollout of the initial electric buses. We'll see how, I think there's been an agreement of sorts that has talked about that for the next 10 years. So we're banking on federal, provincial, and local partnerships for that. In the range of a diesel bus, I think heavy-duty bus, we're probably looking at about $450,000 for that bus. And I think for electric bus, it's probably closer to $700,000. So that would be the range, I think, between the two. But we're certainly looking through all those partnership efforts to help with the funding of it.
That's great. So we won't abandon our lobbying effort with senior government to make sure those contributions come forward. Thank you.
Okay, welcome.
Director Kettler.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions as well. I'm just wondering about, so the CNG buses, is that a conversion process from the current diesel, or do you have to buy a whole new bus for that?
They have been a whole new fleet, and
Okay.
you need the CNG infrastructure in your facilities as well to go along with that.
Okay. And I was wondering if you could go back to that chart that talked about the timing of the light and heavy duty. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why the medium duty buses are so late, being that it probably isn't a cost reason, because obviously the heavier duty ones would be more expensive.
So we have just gone through a whole life cycle of previous Dennis Dart medium duty buses that had been retired. And we now have a vicinity medium duty bus that's running around several communities. And most of them are about a 2017, 2018 vintage, and they're a 10-year life. So you would see in terms of that replacement cycle, we're going to see the best use of our existing fleet everywhere that we have right now, try to get the maximum potential out of it, and they kind of fall into that time frame. It's a 10-year bus. So in terms of how BC Transit works with their fleet, we do move the fleet around different communities as needed. But in general, for this plan, we're looking at only electric medium-duty buses would start to be purchased in that time frame. So we would get the life out of what we have right now for the diesels.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Director Frisch.
Yeah, thanks. Good to see you, Myrna. And I'm sorry if I bothered the other employees too much at UBCM.
Oh, and I have to apologize. I'm really sorry. It's one of UBCMs that I have not been to. So, your team, I missed to see Russell as well. So I don't think you bothered them at all. I think they felt very happy to speak with you.
So about the light duty, does that mean we could be looking at our community having some light duties in the near future? Like, do you know when the replacement is for our light? And we only have light and medium duties, I assume.
So you have 4 heavy duties, you have 10 medium duties, and you have about 10 light duties. And that's between community bus for like the 13, 14 routes that Director Grieve talked about, and the handy darts. With the light duty RBOX, they are about a 5-year life. One thing that I do know is there are a number of communities that are willing to be early adopters in terms of moving this electrification forward faster. I think you probably expressed that to Aaron when you were there. But that's what we're trying to work at. I mean, we do have many of those in the province, and it's going to be one of those things where how do we move them around with the proper amount of life that we have left in them? Your RBOX at the moment are probably very close to being replaced. And so that's what we have to look at is all of the fleets for the different communities and the whole replacement plan. How is it best for us to start looking at where should we start first? And how would we maybe make a bigger puzzle of the plan to move the vehicles around to different communities to make it happen the best way possible? We're looking at trying to deploy small fleets at a time so that we can see how they work as opposed to bringing in a complete brand new fleet and using it for pilot processes. So I can't speak to how your light-duty buses in terms of timing, but certainly once we get this program underway and the director happening, then we can have a better idea of who in the province and how the replacement plan works, starts to fan out and give us some information on the time.
And could CNG play a role in our community?
So that's a good question. There will be other systems that will be looked at for potential CNG. Right now, I know that in looking at the analysis, you want to have a fairly large number of buses in your fleet to make it worthwhile. I know that Fortis is out there speaking quite loudly about putting the lines in and making it a lot more palatable to bring them forward. So we're trying to find systems where basically the facility is going to be able to manage the infrastructure, the fueling, compressed natural gas fueling infrastructure. We certainly would like, this goes out a bit further, for those systems that are already having a BC Transit facility in place. When you go through your RFP process and your operating companies change hands, it's one of those things where you want to make sure you're going to be able to have continuity with that type of fueling and that type of bus that you have. So I would say Comox Valley could be a system that gets looked at for CNG, but I wouldn't put money on it, so to speak. And I think our teams are going to be looking at, in terms of bridging that gap, going from diesel to electric. That's really what we want to do. You're reducing your GHG emissions. And I think the other thing in the CNG is just this last year is we're seeing a 30-foot CNG come into play as well. And I believe some of those are going to be coming into Victoria. Up till now, it's been a 40-foot heavy-duty bus. So you've got a mixed fleet. We want to make sure we keep that mixed fleet. So all those pieces have to go to the evaluation and the analysis of, would you be one of the eligible communities for that?
Thanks so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Director Cole-Hamilton.
Yeah, thank you. I think actually most of my questions were answered in your answer about CNG. I mean, I assume the reason that you're purchasing new CNG buses, which have a 10-year lifespan, is just simply the electric equivalent is not available. Is it a supply problem that's causing the purchase of natural gas vehicles?
That was one of the technologies that we were moving towards, away from diesel. The heavy-duty 40-foot buses have a 13-year life. The medium duties have 10. But it was one of the fuel technologies that was on the list to move away from diesel. Electric is taking a little bit longer. I think Nanaimo RDN was the first system that received them, and they had them in 2017. So it's one of the other alternative fuel types that we are happy to be using in our fleets as well.
Would I be right in thinking that as soon as there are sufficient volumes of electric buses out there, you'll probably switch from purchasing CNG to electric where possible, so as to be having zero carbon buses rather than low carbon buses, which are CNG?
I think that remains to be seen. I think once you build that infrastructure into the facility, there's three pieces of infrastructure with RDN right now that they use to fuel all their buses. They have a fleet of 40 foots, and they've got about 16 light duties that are still, they're gasoline, I think. But once you build that infrastructure, I think you'd have to do the analysis to make sure where is the cost benefit to completely changing from that fuel type to electric. Or would you look at doing a mixed fleet? I'm not too sure in terms of what that would look like.
Okay, great. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Director Grieve.
Okay, thank you. When you speak of zero carbon buses, we're talking about zero carbon operation of the buses would be zero carbon. My understanding is most of the buses that we get, our country of origin is China. And when you actually consider the extraction, the smelting, the milling, and the manufacturing occurring in a faraway country with far laxer environmental standards than we have, you know, just so we can have a warm and fuzzy feeling when we get on a bus. You know, it's a bit of a fool's game. I think if people were really serious about reducing carbon, you'd have every one of those buses full, whether running on diesel or renewable natural gas, regular natural gas, what have you. But by putting people on a bus, you can take 40 cars off the road. So, I mean, that begs the question, why not emulate what Victoria's doing and make buses free? And then we could actually do something about our carbon footprint. Thank you.
Not what I was expecting from Director Grieve, but thanks for that. Do we have any more questions? I don't see any lights. So thank you very much, Myrna, for your
Thank you very much, too.
presentation.
All right. Enjoy your dinner.
Thanks, thanks. So before we break for dinner, can we move receipt? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. All right, so let's take a 20-minute dinner break. Do you want 10? I am fine with 10. Right on. All right, so we'll break and we'll come back at just 5 after. All right, so I'll call the meeting to order again. Next up, we have the UBID request to undertake a governance study. Moved, seconded by Director Grieve. So I'll hand it over to staff.
James Warren.
Thank you. So I'll just provide a very quick update on this. I think the report's fairly self-explanatory. Union Bay Improvement District is an improvement district to the south of us, and they have 3 fundamental services they deliver: water supply and distribution, street lighting, and fire protection. And they have written a letter to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and ourselves indicating that they would like to have support in undertaking a restructure study. And what that would do is it can look at the services they provide, the condition of their assets, and provide information back to the community so that the community can make a decision around whether converting to regional district services or staying as an improvement district is in the best interest of the community itself. And so this is a process that we've been through a couple of times on a couple of different improvement districts. The ministry has a fairly extensive guide on how to manage through these things and which sort of elements to watch out for. Our recommendation is fairly wordy, but it tries to capture the different elements of what a restructure planning grant and infrastructure planning grant could assist with. And we've been in communication with the Union Bay Improvement District administrator. We have a regular meeting with the chair and the trustees. And so this is recommendation has been put together with the assistance of both the Union Bay Improvement District and ministry staff. And we're here for any questions that you might have.
All right, and we have one alternate director, McCollum.
Yeah, just a small question. Is the grant that is referenced in the report expected to cover the whole cost of conducting a study?
The study, yeah, it generally is. These studies are not they're not super extensive, and so the grant funding is intended to cover all of it.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
There is a staff time equivalent, of course, that we have to work with the Union Bay District, the consultant, very likely some public meetings and outreach, and so there is a staff component. We don't generally get cost recovery on that.
Okay.
But the consultant fees are covered generally.
Okay, thanks.
Director Swift.
Thank you. I'm just wondering about the possibility of the sewer system and if that would be somehow worked into this or not.
So not specifically for this conversion study, because Union Bay Improvement District doesn't manage sewer, it's not one of their principal services, this study wouldn't look at that. Certainly it's work that our planning and engineering departments are both undertaking around the Union Bay Estates, if that's what your reference is.
Oops.
Sorry. I know there's some consideration being given to taking the wastewater from Union Bay, and I'm not exactly sure how extensive that is. And we haven't heard much at the Sewage Commission, but I didn't know if this would be a time that that would also be rolled into that.
The concept of wastewater from electoral area A, the south area, was presented to the Sewage Commission for consideration. Study work is underway. It is probably due to be presented in December to the Sewage Commission. One of the things is that if sewage does come that way, it will be conveyed through the conveyance system that is currently up in the air in terms of what the options are through the liquid waste management plans. So some of the delay for that work has been on that account, but very different and separate from Union Bay. But just to give you some context about your question.
Director Kettler.
Yeah, just some clarity on what we'd be taking over. The highway is obviously will continue to be the purview of Modi, but then
Correct, yeah.
all the side roads and residential roads would be part of the regional district.
So the side roads and those are already part of the regional district in the sense that they don't fall in a municipality. And so Ministry of Transportation is responsible for those roads, and they would continue to be responsible for those roads.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then with Union Bay Estates, is that still the case?
Well, like I say, planning and engineering services is working right now with the developer and trying to understand just what those different elements of infrastructure would be, and so that is still, like, still in the development stages. Again, this study would focus entirely on the water supply distribution, fire protection, and street lighting. Yeah.
So they currently, what fire is that under our purview? Their fire protection now?
Right now, no. Union Bay Improvement District has its own fire hall, its own fire chief, its own apparatus. And so part of this study would identify, it would inventory all those elements, and it would identify whether any of those assets are up for replacement, what those costs might be, and then inform the public on, if you stay as an improvement district, this is what you can expect in terms of future service delivery. If you convert to a regional district, this is what you might expect in terms of future service delivery.
Okay, and again with Union Bay Estates, I know there was concern about that development being built on top of coal hills from a fire protection lens. Is that something that we are concerned about, liability with that development?
The outside the study, but for your information, the Union Bay Estates, the owners of that land, have had to rehabilitate the land to the satisfaction of the Ministry of Environment, and there is an accepted plan in place for the remediation of the site and treatment of the coal slag that's on the private property, and then the portion that became Crown provincial land, the province is looking after that. It would, if I'm not sure whether those lands are in the fire service area or not, it would be up to the fire chief of the Union Bay Improvement District to have contingency plans or preparation plans in place. But certainly this study is all about looking at what is the state of the Union Bay, how well have they managed their affairs, and for the benefit of the ratepayers that own the water system, water, fire, and street lighting, is it more cost effective for those services to be administered by the regional district rather than the improvement district? And it will be up to them to decide. It's 100% they're autonomous to decide that. For us, it's a matter, if we take over these services, what are those pitfalls or what are those potential issues? So it gives us an awareness to that, so we're fully prepared to know and understand their complement of staff and how we will manage those, whether they have right-of-way risks, liabilities, agreements in place, and what the state of their infrastructure is, so that going into this conversion, the ratepayers are well aware of the needs for system replacement and upgrades. It's not the big bad regional district suddenly deciding that or telling them that in 2 or 3 years' time if we take it over.
Thank you.
Right. Director Grant.
Yeah, thanks. That leads into just what I was thinking. I remember a group came to see us last term regarding doing just this, and it was highly contentious. And I don't think my phone rang on any issue more than this, where you've got a community that's about 49, and I think it's important, I like the fact that we're doing this and giving them and going to do this study with them, but I think it's important that it's them asking us to do it, not that we're sticking our nose in and trying to do anything. And I think your point is well made, because this will get contentious down there unless something's changed that I don't know of. And I think it's just important that we're just doing what they're asking us to do.
Madam Chair, I just wish to express I really appreciate you saying that, and it is with those eyes that we go into this, knowing that it is contentious. And basically, we have key messaging prepared already for ourselves as staff and the area director that this is their decision, not ours. We don't want them to come, but we don't not want them to come. We are indifferent. We are completely neutral, there to look after their services if that's what they decide, and to share information and be open and transparent so that they make the right decision.
So we're Switzerland in this issue. All right. Director Frisch.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to quickly say that in support of doing this study, and as you clarified, this is about Union Bay looking at our administration as a possible way to manage their affairs, and it would be siloed like all our services, and it wouldn't necessarily, and maybe this is a question, affect other ratepayers in other jurisdictions or using other services of the regional district. Would that be correct to assume?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
That the services that we may undertake, or that the CVRD may undertake for the Union Bay area, wouldn't affect the ratepayers for other services that the regional district manages.
So no, that is correct. And there would be 3 new services of the regional district if the conversion were to take place. Any assets and liabilities that existed for Water Union Bay would continue to be there for Water Union Bay, and it would be managed as any other service that we have.
And the exception would be sort of general services would be sort of, I mean, we'd share a lot of the people, obviously, and there might be some.
Yeah, I think in some of the past experiences we've had, there are some cost efficiencies to be had when you've got engineers on staff, you've got an accounting firm that does our annual audit. These are costs that are probably lower in a bigger scale. Versus a smaller improvement district having to take those on themselves.
Okay, thank you very much.
Director Grieve.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think when you talk about the big bad regional district, about 8 years ago, there was some concern over the regional district coming to Union Bay to steal our water, and like, why the hell we'd want their water? No offense to anybody living there. So we worked out a memorandum of understanding that basically said that although no one would compel them, that should Union Bay decide to have the regional district take over the water system, that water system would be brought up to current provincial standards. My question is it at current the BC drinking water standards, or will it be when they finish their?
So the Union Bay has done some pretty good work in terms of knowledge and understanding of their water system, but part of the study work being funded by the province is to ensure that there is a thorough understanding of the state of the works. And
will there be any Area A feasibility money put into this? Further to David's question.
So the grant that we would be seeking would cover the study works. And that would be used to do the condition assessment, engage with the public, and enable the public then to make a decision, the ratepayers to make that decision.
Thank you.
Great. Director Arbor.
Thank you. So everybody's on the same level on this. We met with UBID on July 25th. And we agreed to ask the province together to do a study to look at 3 options, being Union Bay staying the same, folding under the regional district or becoming a municipality or incorporating. The province got back and said that municipality or incorporation should not be on the table. We have not had, as far as I know, a meeting with UBID since. Their chair has resigned. And so I cannot guarantee that on the UBID front, they may go back, they may have an election in the next couple of months, they may still want the municipal option on the table. And my word and commitment was to support that. So, I would still ask the board to approve this today, to be in favor of this. I'm just saying that if new information or as things unfold, that other option is put back on the table or not, I do not know. But what I committed is to work, and that we did with the staff level, is to work together. Okay, and right now I'm not sure that everybody will be comfortable in Union Bay with that incorporation being taken off the table. So that's just my caution. I think it's a good thing. We had unanimous support between UBID and ourselves at the time of our meeting to proceed. I just want the board to be aware of things that could happen down the road. And in general, what we're doing is gathering information around their system and their various assets and assessing, giving options to the taxpayer, the one taxpayer in Union Bay. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to comment that one of the letters on the attached to the staff report is the Union Bay Improvement District agreeing to the province's terms that it would not study the municipal alternative. So Union Bay has resolved to support this study as the province has supported. If that were to change and further analysis of a municipal option were part of it, I think that's up to them to decide. But I think we would have to reflect on the funds provided to study or expand the terms of the study. So we've presented to you a recommendation to proceed with a study of regional versus improvement district governance on the basis of the proposal provided by the province and union-based support of that. If things change, we will bring that forward to you, but I wouldn't suggest that you should necessarily support that without reassessing what is being provided in terms of resources and our ability to get the information that we need.
Did you have a subsequent, Director? Okay, great. I don't see any other questions, so I'll call the question on receipt. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And we have a recommendation.
I'll move the recommendation. Would you like me to read any of it?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'll move the recommendation, and in short, move that the CVRD, in partnership with UBID, support an application to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing for a restructuring, planning, and infrastructure, restructure and infrastructure planning grant that would conduct condition assessments of UBID, analyze the government options of converting the streetlights and the water supply and so on, and develop and execute a communication plan.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. Great. Moving on, the grant status report.
And Madam Chair and Directors, this is provided for your information. If you have any questions, staff can answer those.
Any questions on the status? I don't see. All right, I don't see any. So on receipt, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Audit service plan for the year ending December 31st, 2019.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
And provided for your consideration is the audit service plan. Beth Dunlop is available if you have any questions regarding the report.
I don't see any questions. So on receipt, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. So we are now into the new business section. Do we want to go for the living wage first? Or?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a report on living wage employer. Moved and seconded. And do staff want to talk to it? Or?
I think it's a proposal of Director Kettler, so perhaps she might wish to introduce it. And we're available to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, hold on.
So we got to hear from the Social Planning Council already about strategy for poverty reduction, and this is part of it. I felt like I wanted to bring this forward because I have been such a proponent of the Coastal Community Social Procurement Initiative, and it has a lot of ties to that. The CVRD is now a signatory to that, so there are resources there to help us. But one of the things that Cumberland does through the Social Procurement Initiative is when we put out an RFP, we basically have a pre-screening of applicants, so that one of those filters is that they do pay a living wage, and in that way that helps promote healthy families, healthy community, and poverty reduction. So it's through social procurement. These are dollars that you're spending anyway, and this is just a way of making sure we're bringing everybody along with us and bringing up the standard of living for everybody. But I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Great. Any questions? We have Director Frisch.
Yeah, it's more a question for staff and just capacity and how long or how much time you think this would take, and do you think you can handle that?
The suggested action here is for staff to come back with a report. I think that's something that we would be able to turn around in fairly short order. We would like to take a look at this and the implications that it may have to some of our services where either part-time employees may not quite live up to these terms. We would also probably identify for you just the potential for unintended consequences with respect to the negotiations we have with the two unions that operate within our facilities, and then also an awareness of if this does affect procurement opportunities or contractors, to just what services we might see additional costs or the potential for additional costs in. So those are the types of issues we would address in a report, turn around in fairly short order for you to consider before you adopt this.
Are some of these issues maybe issues we would deal with in camera?
Possibly, but possibly we'll take that into consideration in preparing the report.
Excellent, thanks.
Great. And alternate director Theos.
Thank you very kindly, Chair. Now, are we talking about living wage just amongst the regional district organization? Is this where the scope is right now? Or the contractors? Okay. I just wanted to
Yeah, I think it's both. It's within, as you heard from the social planning, this organization is kind of where they're starting with their poverty reduction initiative. But we are already part of the social procurement initiative. So that addresses the contractors and the bids, and then I think this is more specific toward this organization itself. And I think, I think for the most part that it'll just be affirming that we are paying. I think, there may be some union issues to work out, but for the most part, I think we are paying a living wage. So it'll just be a nice feather in the cap, I think. But if we aren't, and I think we should certainly look at that too, because I think that's an issue. If we have employees that aren't making a living wage, that's something that we should be addressing anyway.
Okay, thank you for that explanation, Jesse. But because I was thinking along those same veins, I couldn't imagine that the regional district wasn't paying at that level or higher. But I do think to myself, a little broader scope, if I could just add, being that I was in business myself as an owner at a young age, and even as an employee for many years at near that minimum wage level or at that minimum wage level, I do feel that there is a little concern with businesses that are going to be saying, we're just not making it, and it's tough times right now. And a study in Washington came out at the University of Washington which is a very liberal organization. And they were saying through that study that the increase of minimum wage, I know this is a little bit different, increase in minimum wage in Washington State actually had negative effects outweighing the positive effects to the people that it was supposed to help the most, because a lot of the employers, not only did they have to let some of those employees go, but then they reduced them down to having minimum wage type of hours, and those minimum wage hours took those people out of potential of having any benefits and whatnot. And so in the end result, they were saying that it was a net loss to the people that needed it the most. So it's just, you know, it is something to really look broader at, you know, as in terms of the impacts and you know, the consequences of trying to do something that we think is, you know, not we, but, you know, if you have it at a larger scale, that we expect is going to really benefit, and then in the end could come back to do more harm. Sorry.
Right, and it's my understanding that we're not asking for any other businesses to follow suit, although I know one of my favorite ramen places is a certified living wage employer, and, you know, they get kudos for that all over social media too. So, did you want to respond, Director Moore?
Well,
Or
yeah,
Director
just
Keller?
a little bit, because we would be in a way, but we already are, I think, in a way, through the social procurement, which we've already adopted. In that way, there are contractors that we are asking to, we are not currently yet because we haven't begun that process, but other municipalities are asking, who are part of the social procurement initiative, to for those contractors to pay a living wage to their employees. It does extend to businesses and smaller businesses, although, you know, the companies that are bidding on these RFPs are usually larger companies. They're not necessarily mom and pop companies. But this specific letter is about us and the CBRD and its employees directly.
Thanks for that comment. Director Grieve.
Well, of course, the elephant in the room here. The one exception to this whole exercise, of course, would be the elected officials around the table, because, you know, I think we would, if we were in the States, we'd be qualifying for food stamps. If this was your only endeavor, it wasn't really complete and honest, but I did keep track one very exceptionally busy month of RD work, when I factored in the study time, reading time, travel time, and all the meetings, including the ones that you don't get remunerated for, the ones you go to because they're societies or what have you. And we were definitely way below the minimum wage for livability. So, I mean, really, you're asking, what you have in elected officials is a volunteer with the stipends.
Director Cole-Hamilton.
I was just going to say, I think the key word there is volunteer, and clearly not only did we all volunteer, we made some considerable efforts to actually be at this table. So I think we'll just all have to live with what we chose.
Right. We knew the wage when we decided to sign up, or okay. Right. So I don't see any more questions. On receipt, all in favor? Opposed? And there is a requested action. Moved and seconded. Do you want to, Director Arbor?
Is my mic on?
Yeah.
Oh, it is. I couldn't see the red light. I'm like, move that staff be directed to prepare a report on the cost and implication of the Comox Valley Regional District becoming a living wage employer.
It's moved and seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. All right. Moving on. Hornby Island Community Economic Enhancement Corporation request for support for the implementation of a municipal and regional district tax. Moved and seconded. And
This is just a request for a letter of support from the regional district for this initiative by the Hornby Island Community Economic Development Corporation. And the resolution for your consideration is provided, which is just that, a letter of support.
I don't see any questions around the table. Do people have comments? Oh, Director Keller.
Yeah, I'm actually excited to see this because I want to see how it works out for them there, because I think that it is a way to kind of deal with the vacation rental issues and the way they conflict with the affordable housing issue, and maybe helping with that, with the second of those. So, thanks.
Director Frisch.
I am definitely in support of this, and I just wanted to throw a tangent out there. We were in a meeting in the City of Courtenay at UBCM with the Minister of Finance, and she suggested that we might be interested in a gas tax, in particular to support, transportation infrastructure, perhaps multimodal or alternative transportation. And so, since this came up, I thought I'd just share that with the board. I think it might be something worth looking at in the future. Thanks.
We'll try and follow up on that. All right, so the requested action has been moved and seconded. All right, I don't see any other comments. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Director Frisch. Oh, was that, sorry, apologies. All right, and if Director Grant could read that out.
That the Comox Valley Regional District Board send a letter of support to Hornby Island Community Economic Enhancement Corporation for the implementation of a municipal and regional district tax at 3% on the purchase of short-term accommodation on Hornby Island. With such funds raised being utilized to support local affordable housing initiatives and tourism marketing programs and projects.
Thank you, Director. Moved and seconded. Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right. We do actually have one more, if we don't mind a varying of the agenda, one more addition under new business, and I'm going to
Sure. Perhaps, Madam Chair, if we could have a resolution to receive a verbal report from Doug DeMarzo regarding recent fire incidents in the valley this day.
Okay. Moved? Seconded? All right.
Yeah, so unfortunately, there's some sad news involved in this update. But about 12 noon today, Oyster River Fire Department was called to help the Courtenay Fire Department with a fire in Merville at a commonly known property as the Hillview Road Apartments. There was one death and 3 people were injured, as reported by fire services. And also 11 people have been evacuated from that site. Our emergency support services have also responded with 3 volunteers to provide services to those residents, and our CMP will be investigating the incident. About the same time, on Denman Island, there was a large structure fire downtown across from the community hall near the school in an old restaurant. Luckily, it was vacated. Denman Island Fire also did a tactical evacuation of the school and store as a precaution. Both Fanny Bay and Hornby Island sent over support as well to assist in that fire. And again, our CMP are investigating that fire as well. And Comox Valley Emergency Program reached out to their ESS volunteer who lives on Denman Island, and there was no reserve services required. I don't have a lot more information about those fires. I think I'll probably just end it there. And I don't really have any more information to give, or I could answer a few questions, but at this point, I don't think there's much more I can say.
There's a question from Director Arbor.
May I just propose a moment of silence for the person who passed?
Great. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. On receipt of the information, seconded, and all in favor? Opposed? All right, great. Sorry to end the meeting in such sad news, but we also do have an in-camera. We don't have any addendum or media questions, so can I have a motion?
Move to go in camera.
Moved? Seconded? And if there's someone could, or let's get Director Frisch, if you could.
Yeah, I'll move that the committee adjourn to an in-camera session pursuant to the following subsections of the community charter. 91A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the regional district or another position appointed by the regional district.
Right, that's moved and seconded. Right. So we'll move in camera. Do we have all in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right.